looking forward to this lightweight contest between a couple of guys looking to capitalize off of their first fights in the UFC. And I say capitalize because it didn't go well for Jamie Mullarkey. It went well. I mean, he earned a bonus. And for Francis Ziam, I mean, definitely didn't go his way against Don Madge. He was stepping in on short notice for Magomed Mustafayev, who was originally supposed to be taking on Madge. And I mean, in that fight, you had the French kickboxer coming in, really trying to capitalize on what he's very good at. And if you've watched any Fares Ziam fight tape from the regional scene or from that one contest in the UFC, throws a really nice leg kick. And I know that's a point of emphasis for the guys on the desk in the UFC, but in every single MMA organization, that seems to be a really key point that they like to drive home. It's the new hot toy or hot thing on the market right now that everybody's starting to employ. And for Fares Ziam, I mean, this guy, former European K1 champ, and you see it in his fights, the way that he keeps his head nice and back. He throws a nice whipping leg kick, but the other thing that he does very well is the fact that he will check a leg kick, which you like to see. And I mean, you've got that pure kickboxing out of Fares Ziam. You can see where he's trying to get more and more well-rounded as his fights have gone on. I know he does have submission finishes on his resume, but you saw it in the fight against Don Madge. When things got tight, he had his back up against the cage, he could get out of some of those bad positions. I mean, I'm not talking about a really exciting fight that he had against Don Madge. If you want to go back and watch it, so be it, or you can take my word for it. It wasn't really the best fight. It sucks that we don't get to see more of Don Madge, and it was great that we got to see South Africa's Dricus du Plessis taking care of business in his UFC debut. But in terms of Fares Ziam, I mean, he comes out of a good gym. We're talking about Bulgarian top team. You might scratch your head, but Morgan Charrier that we've seen with Cage Warriors challenge for a belt there. Another young guy in some of the lower weight classes. Karl Almasu as well that you've seen with Bellator. I mean, he did have a fight against Ben Askren, kind of leading the charge there. And for Jamie Mullarkey coming out of Australia, this is a guy that you look at his pro record and his early pro record. Knockout loss to Alexander Volkanovski. So you kind of shake your head. What are you going to get out of this guy? Trains out of Central Coast MMA in New South Wales, Australia, with a guy that you might not think he'd train with. Matt, I think that Ross Pearson leading the charge at Central Coast, that's a pretty good gym to be training at. Anyway, you might not see a lot of UFC talent there, but for a guy like Jamie Mullarkey, it kind of shows in his game.
Exactly, and a lot of people do forget Ross Pearson was a coach on The Ultimate Fighter, and that was the thing that kind of made him realize, hey, I'm pretty good at this whole coaching thing. And yes, he coached a little bit before, but you got to think the amount of experience that a guy like Ross Pearson has that he can give to a fighter like Jamie Mullarkey in the same division that he competed in, just a wealth of knowledge, and a guy who could kind of do a little bit of everything, which is really what you want from a coach. I mean, we go on about guys like Faraz Sahabi, who, yes, they can not only tell you what they want you to do, but they can actually get in there and kind of show you the techniques themselves. And I think Ross Pearson's a really important guy for that. Jamie Mullarkey and Fares Ziam had very different first fights in the UFC, because we were kind of talking about the Don Madge fight, and it's not a good one, let's be honest. Jamie Mullarkey fought Brad Riddell in his first fight, though, at Marvel Stadium, and that fight was an absolute slobber knocker. And it was a fight of the night, like you had mentioned, earning them both some bonus money. And it was really interesting, too, because Jamie Mullarkey, going into that fight, you assumed, okay, he's going to try to take Brad Riddell down. And at least at the start of the fight, he did, but then he started getting hit to the body, and his gas tank did kind of slow as the fight went on, and Riddell was able to kind of, he was able to strengthen as the fight was going on. The weird thing is, it's really hard to go from Brad Riddell to fighting Fares Ziam, because I don't really want to say it's a huge step down, because we don't really know where he is yet in the UFC, but Jamie Mullarkey has the experience. I'd say his grappling is probably better, just due to the fact that Mullarkey, we saw in his first fight, he struck with Brad Riddell, and the whole time they're saying, oh, just wait till he gets to the ground. He's so good. He's submission artist, submission specialist, and he does have pretty good takedowns. The only problem with Jamie Mullarkey is that he does kind of pay for it if he doesn't get the takedown. We saw that in the Riddell fight, where Riddell will be able to stuff his takedown and really make him pay for it time after time after time. So it will be interesting to see what the adjustments he's made coming into this one, because if Mullarkey does go out there and just try to throw caution to the wind like he did in his first fight, I don't think that's the smartest way to go. But if he does fight like he did at the start of that Riddell fight, really try to mix in his takedowns with his clinch work, with his striking, and if he can make this, the ultimate MMA fight, not just make this kickboxing fight, Jamie Mullarkey, I do think, has a fairly bright future.
I was surprised, too, in watching that fight. And again, it was on short notice. You had Don Madge getting ready for Magomed Mustafayev. That's very well-rounded, but you know him mostly for striking. So Fares Ziam went in there and tried to clinch up, and he'd try and clinch up in the middle of the cage. That's not something you typically see, especially out of a kickboxer. Now, we did see it on the regional scene in some of his fights. There is a lot of tape out there that you don't have to look too hard for, but the Julio Matos fight, that was one where you saw Fares Ziam having a lot of success with his striking. Then you go out and you watch his next fight against Yassin Belhaj, and that was a fight where, again, Matt, we kind of focused on it. We saw the submission finish. It was kind of sloppy. It wasn't the highest level jiu-jitsu, but overall a good win for him. His takedowns are pretty basic. He'll shoot in for the doubles. He'll kind of go for the body lock and try and trip you and get you down. So it's not really the best, the highest of levels. Whereas Jamie Mullarkey, you look at that competition. I mean, he got knocked out in the Volkanovski fight. Then he got knocked out again. Kind of strange there. For Ziam, he did take on decent names on his way up, and he's a really young prospect. You can see it on the screen, 23 years old. But a win over Damian Lapalus 4 years ago when the kid's 19, that's really telling. I mean, the Lapalus brothers are no joke. The win over Abner Lavares as well, that's another big one. You've seen him fight some decent names over his entire career. Maybe they weren't all wins. The other thing here, too, that I want to focus on, you got 6'1", 75-inch reach for Ziam, and for Mullarkey, 6 feet, 74-inch reach. You don't see a lot of lightweights that big. I mean, maybe these are guys that later on in their career, maybe you'll see them move up to 170. You can almost like them, especially for Ziam's frame. You look at him and you go, James Vick's a guy that's really long. If you squint
a little
like
bit,
that.
you kind of see James Vick. He does fight. The one thing I don't like about Ziam is he does just kind of pull back with his head. He's used to being the taller guy, and not saying that this is the fight that's going to cost him, but we do see guys when they do have those holes in their defense. When they first get into the UFC, yes, they can move their way up the rankings, but as they start to fight the higher level guys and kind of pick apart the holes in it, they will start to get caught. But that is the one thing that worries me about Ziam. He pulls his head back kind of like Luke Rockhold, and eventually you're going to get caught doing that. But I don't think in this fight this will be the one that catches him, because Jamie Mullarkey probably going to be more of a wrestling heavy attack. He can strike if he has to and if he can't get the takedowns, but honestly, I'm really excited for this being the first fight on the prelims.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it too. The thing that really surprised me, so if we look over on Tapology at the total votes, at a 623 votes, 78% going with Australia's Jamie Mullarkey, 72% saying he's going to win by decision. This has actually been the biggest swing in the odds so far. Jamie Mullarkey opened a plus 200 favorite. That line dropped quick, and it's continued to drop. He's now a minus 132 according to Best Fight Odds. If we look at Ziam, open minus 235. He's now a plus 107 underdog. And I find that surprising that that's the spread that you had to start, because going back and watching the fight tape, again, Jamie Mullarkey, you worry about it. He gets knocked out by Volkanovski, and then he gets knocked out by a guy with a negative record who was 5-6-1 at the time. Since then, put on a nice win streak, made it into the UFC, and then the loss to a really tough out in Brad Riddell. All right, stuff like that's going to happen. That seemed like a huge jump up in competition from what he'd been facing. Both of these guys, I should note too, out of Jamie Mullarkey's 12 wins, one of them by decision, the rest by finish. Same thing goes for Fares Ziam. 9 total finishes, and again, the 1 decision win. So these guys are finishers. I just see more attributes that I like out of a complete mixed martial artist in Jamie Mullarkey than I've seen from Fares Ziam. I think he's just a little bit too green. I do like the wins. I do like the finishes. I just think it's a little bit too early for him. This is a good test. He could certainly get the win, but I do like Jamie Mullarkey in this one.
I agree. If you can beat a guy like Mullarkey, then you prove that you deserve to be there. Sorry, words are difficult. But for Ziam, I would like to see him not get more experience on the regional scene, but if we could even see him on like a contender series, fight one of those guys, be one of the headlines, kind of build him up a little bit more than the UFC has. He's still only 23 and has a really bright future, but I just think Jamie Mullarkey, he's fought higher level competition on the regional scene. He's got more experience, and the fact that he can just do a little bit of everything should be able to get him by in this one.
Matt, I'm really looking forward to this fight. We both have Jamie Mullarkey to get the win. It's a great card. You're not going to want to miss our extended look at our main event, the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung taking on T-City Brian Ortega. Matt, as we always say with Fight Night picks, keep it locked in, and let's get into it.